Today we're gonna do a bunch of different things, and if I go quickly, anything we need to cover, the questions that you have, we can certainly cover that next time. Next time we will say, all right, here's some tools that we want you to bring, and those would be, yoga mat, if you have stretchy bands, and I'll kind of go through the tools as I use them today. Today, we're going to be talking about strong and strength. And so we're going to start with a warm up where I'm going to have you do sort of an open and close. And we're going to start to work on opening up the chest and sort of stretching that out, but try to get that nice and warm. Anytime we're in a standing position, think about keeping your knees sort of soft. And so you're not doing a locked knee. Start off with your hands, the back of your hands together, and then open up like you're reaching all the way back. So you can lead with your thumbs, but sort of do this sort of open and close, right? So I'm going to have you do the open and close while I talk a little bit about strength and the importance of strength. Strength is just one of the key elements. When we talk about strength and being strong, what that really is that we want to have as much lean body mass as possible. There was a huge meta study, which is a study taking a look at several studies that just came out in the American College of Sports Medicine. All right, we're going to go to a swimming stroke, backstroke. So think about leading with your pinky. The study really took a look at exercise and then how much lean body mass you should have as a breast cancer or cancer survivor. Lean body mass is really key to keeping the recurrence of our cancers down, and especially for breast cancer, they're looking at taking a look at lean body mass when you go in for your diagnosis to determine exactly how much chemotherapy you would need, which is novel. I had never heard of that previously, so I think that's really key. So we talk about strength and being strong. The goal is to build as much lean body mass or as much muscle mass as possible. It's important because what we're trying to do is when you've got more lean body mass, right? We've had the recurrence of breast cancer is down. Your lean body mass is going to be determining how many calories you burn at rest, okay? And then the more that you burn, the clearly you're going to have your weight is going to be down at a lower level. So more muscle mass. Your weight may actually, be a little bit higher because muscle is about 75% water. So it's incredibly dense. So as you do strength training, in some cases, sometimes your weight, your scale weight could actually be a little bit higher, but your size or shape could be smaller. So muscle mass is your friend. You want to have as much as possible. That requires us to do strength training, right? And so lifting. Today we're going to be doing mostly sort of body weight training because we don't have like a heavy duty weight machine or a bunch of weights. We'll do a couple little tools with some of the weights that we have. That your body weight in itself is something that can be quite good for strength-based training. We're going to do a little warm up. So think about doing this sort of side-to-side stroke. Open palms. Again, we want to open up the chest, work on our back muscles. But the key is that we're going to do this little side-to-side moving back and forth. And if you don't have a lot of space, you don't have to go too far over. You can just take one or two steps. But I want you to be nice and low, so you're engaging the quads. Your palms are open, and you're kind of heading from side to side. We're going to do this initially. And then what I want you to think about doing is, as you come over to the side, lift one leg. So we've got a bit of a balance move as well as our warm up. So side to side, and then lift one leg up, side to side, lift one leg up. So sort of back and forth. You're going to start to feel your hips engaging, and you're going to start to feel perhaps your quads, right? Muscles in the front. So that's the idea. The legs are huge muscle groups. And so we want to spend a lot of time working on our legs. They are our base of support. So that's the first sort of warm up. Next thing I want to do is sort of you want to test your flexibility. And again, this could be challenging depending on if you have neuropathy or just in general in terms of balance. But what I want you to do is think about bringing the knee up to the chest. So the torso stays sort of upright and you are bringing one leg up to your chest. You can do this walking if you have more space where you're sort of walking and pulling in as you go. It's a great way of testing out how flexible your hamstrings are. Like sometimes if you can only get it up so high, then you know you need to work on your flexibility in your hamstrings. Next thing we're going to do is a modified jumping jack. Okay, mind the cat. And so you don't have to do a full jumping jack. It's basically we're going to go from one side to the other. So you're taking a side step, bringing the hands up, side step, hands up. The idea with any kind of warm up is that we want to get the core temperature up higher than it is now. So if we're asking our body to do any kind of flexibility training or any strength training, to be sort of in the ultimate position, you want to have the body or the core temperature up fairly high. My cat is right here, and she could get her head, smashed in just a bit. We're going to start from the bottom and sort of work our way up. So we think about our feet, right? Everything starts with the feet. It is your base of support. And if your base of support is not stable, then it throws everything off. So we kind of think about our feet, everything starts there and it works its way up the food chain. So the first thing we're going to do is we're basically just going to do a toe tap on with both feet. Heel is down and you're sort of just tapping your toe. It starts to warm up the shin, right? And it starts to get you into this foot flexion. A lot of times as you get older, the foot flexion is something that goes south, right? It's something that you'll see it where people are, instead of actually doing heel strike, they basically are just shuffling along, right? So you see that sort of old person shuffle. Well, we want to try to avoid the old person shuffle and work on actually striking with the heel and then coming through on the toe. And to do that, the next thing after you've done your toe warm up is that you would do a heel strike walk. So exaggerate the heel down as you walk. So you're kind of doing this little kick out where your heel is down and then you're going through the motion. So you want to strike with the heel and then come through on the toe. People that I work with that have sort of mobility issues, maybe neuropathy in their feet, have to start working on that sort of strike position where you're focusing on hitting the heel down and then coming through the toe. And one way to do that is to just do what I call a toe kick. And so it's just an exercise where you're sort of kicking with your toe up in the air, right? So we're flexing our foot. When you kick your foot up, when you've got that little toe up, that's the dorsiflexion. Plantar flexion is when you plant the foot down, so when you're actually striking down. So think about if you aren't, if you're shuffling through your steps and you're not doing your heel to toe strike, work on a couple of these exercises. Work on trying to get that toe up and exaggerate, slow your movement down as you're walking. So slow your walk down and concentrate on really striking with the heel and then rolling through the foot. That'll help out with getting that sort of base of support and getting your balance a little more settled. So start with the feet, and now we're going to work our way up to the legs. So basic exercises for the lower body and really the whole body. You know, the legs have such great long muscles. So when we think about like building lean body mass, the biggest sort of opportunity that we have generally is in our lower body, right? So because we've got these huge, big muscles. So if we're going to really work our legs, we have an opportunity to kind of increase that bandwidth as far as the muscle and the amount of muscle that you have in your legs. Basic exercises for that our squats and lunges. Those are things that you can do that you do a lot in the course of the day, right? So some of us sit more than necessary. So when you sit, what happens is you, in that seated position, right? So you're in that sort of half position, and the hamstrings start to shorten up, right? You wonder why your back is hurting after sitting in a car for a long period of time or sitting on a hard chair for a long period of time. The hamstrings start to tighten, right? So we want to get up and we want to keep that nice and fluid. The best way to do any kind of squat is to think about it as far as being in a chair, okay? We're going to use the chair, and we'll use the chair for a couple exercises today. So if we have a chair, great. What I want you to do is think about the concept of how to do a proper squat. Most people, when I say, okay, I want to have, show me your squat, a lot of times, if I'm looking at it from the side and I say, okay, let me see your squat, a lot of times people will come with their knees forward, right? Because their hamstrings are super tight. A proper squat, you think about it like what I want to do is sit back in the chair, is I want to start with my belly button in, lead with my butt, keep my head and chest high, and then sit down. So you can see in this position, and I've got the chair back here as my safety net, I'm in pretty much almost a 90-degree position, right? That 90-degree position is really what you're shooting for. Sometimes when people say, oh, my knees hurt when I squat, and a lot of times that's because they're going forward over the squat as opposed to backwards. And so the goal is to, when you're squatting, is to sit in that position and practice coming up and down. So let's practice that. If you don't have a chair, practice going through the position as you would without touching anything. Again, so belly button is in, butt is backwards. We're going to lead with our butt because we know we want to hit towards the back. That's going to put us in the proper position. And squats are just such a great thing to do. If you want, you can touch the chair and then come back up. So you just got this little butt touch and then come back up. You can't go all the way down. Just come down to where you can come up. I mean, just come down to a comfortable spot and then back up. As you're doing it, when I see people doing squats, I watch people doing squats. A couple things will come to mind. If they get down to a position in the squat, they're coming down, and then all of a sudden, the knees sort of give out. They're either sinking this direction, for the most part, they're usually sinking in, not necessarily out, but their knees start to sort of buckle up. And that's just simply because they don't have the strength through the full range of motion, right? So the full range of motion would be here. If you get to this point and your knees start to wobble, you want to work through that range. And so you're slowly, slowly, slowly getting further down within that range as you get stronger. The goal is to be able to go through that complete range and not have the knees wiggle. If your knees are wiggling while you're doing the squat, focus on just trying to work within the position where they're not moving around. So come down to where you feel comfortable and then back up. Great way to do squats is up against a wall. So we call that a wall sit. And it allows you to use sort of a base of support. And you're recreating that sort of chair position, but now I'm doing it on the wall. So what I like to do is have my feet sort of, a couple inches apart. My knees are right over my ankles. My back is against the wall. My eyes are level. In other words, you don't want to have your head up too high or down too low. Sometimes if we've got, if you have a bit of a protrusion in the back or a little bit of a dowager hump, a lot of times you can't even get, your head's going to be tilted down a little bit as opposed to being up. If you're not quite there yet, let's say your shoulders are super tight, they're drawn forward, just focus on trying to keep the eyes level, okay? In this position in the wall sit, think about rolling the shoulders round and then touching the wall as you're in the back position. So rolling the shoulders up and then back as I'm touching the wall. So roll the shoulders up and touch. The wall is a great position to kind of give you that support, but you're going to certainly feel pretty quickly, maybe in some cases, that your thighs are starting to burn. Work your way up. You know, the goal is to be sitting on the wall for a minute, but maybe you can only do 10 seconds at a time, 15 seconds. The goal again is just to make sure that you're nice and steady. Look down and see where your knees are. Make sure they're not buckling in as you come up or as you're sitting, right? Or leaking out, right? So because we want to make sure that we're right over our ankles so that we have that good position. That puts your knee in a better position. Part of that, oh, I feel pain when I go up or down the stairs, is the way or the angle of the knee. And if we have our knee sort of jetting out over our ankle, that torque adds a little tension to the knees themselves. So you have to make sure that you're not going too far over the top of the knee. That's your basic squat. The next basic exercise is a lunge. But what I find when people do lunges is that it's very difficult for people to do a lunge and know where they are unless they have a mirror. If they're looking at themselves, take a lunge in a mirror. And again, it goes back to the position of where your knee is. And so what I want, do it over here so you can see, I've got this like dark spot here. What we want when we take our lunge is that we want this not to be over the top, so we don't want the knee to be over the toe. We want the knee to be right in line with the ankle. Okay, so you're taking a lunge, and this is the position. So, for whatever reason, when people do lunges forward, it always is, they're tipping over the top, their toes are too far forward. But when you're doing a reverse lunge, it tends to get people in the better position. So you start off and you're taking a step back, right? So practice doing a reverse lunge. I like to try to put a little bit of hand movement in the mix just to get my upper body moving as well. So reverse lunge, again, I've got this nice long stride. When I ask people to do lunges, they kind of do like this sort of half stride. Your legs are fairly long. If your legs are fairly long, you can take a pretty long step backwards. Now, if it starts to feel like you're off balance, your feet don't have to be in a direct line. Start off with your feet hip width apart. Take that stride out. So they're still hip width apart. So you should, if I'm looking at it this way, you're still going to have a pretty good support base. If you have it where you're in line here, you're not going to have the best support base. So look at your positions. Go slowly. There is not a speed contest with this. A lot of times, my clients will, it's like they're trying to get over it, get through as quickly as possible. I'd rather have you do it correctly, slowly, so that you feel comfortable with the position. I don't want your foot to rotate from side to side. If you're going too fast, then a lot of times your foot will rotate from side to side. So if you're off balance, just go slowly and then get into that position. Foot should be flat. In yoga, they talk about making sure that your big toe is stapled to the ground. So feel all those toes holding you in position as you make your step. Now, if doing a reverse lunge is something that is really tricky, grab the wall and do it, right? So you can just have your finger on the wall when you do your position. You're taking your stride out or back, and that just gives you a little more balance so that you feel confident. You can have the arm or the chair there so that you feel like you're not going to topple it over. That's the reverse lunge. So again, we're sort of working on these major muscle groups, the quads and the hamstrings. Glutes in the back, right? Those are your big drivers for your lower body. And again, those are the places where we have the sort of the biggest opportunity, right? To have good strength gains. All right, so that's the lower body. We're going to start to work on what we, the rest of the sort of like moving up the torso. And I'm going to have you get your chair, right? And this could be, we're not going to get all the way down on the ground. This is a modified, these are modified exercises. These are exercises you can do on the ground, but if you can't get, to that position yet, because that seems like it's too much work, do it on a chair initially, or a bed, or a couch, something where you feel like you can get into the position. So we're going to use the chair, and we're going to do a regular straight arm plank. So we start to work on upper body shoulder strength. When you do a plank, again, the core is, we have a bunch of things that are going to be engaged. Our hands, our shoulders are right over our wrists. Our body should look like a surfboard, so it's straight ahead. Your head should not be drooped down. It should be in what we call neutral spine. So bring your head up so that it's not completely dangling off of your shoulders. Find a comfortable spot. This is just a straight arm plank. When we're doing a straight arm plank, again, I'm going to make sure that my shoulders are right over my wrists. The key here is not to bend the arms so that you're leaking, what I call leaking out the strength. Arms are absolutely solid. They are not bent. And so you're sort of transferring that strength from one side to the other across the shoulders. For breast cancer survivors, it's really important to build up the shoulders. For ovarian, it's basically great for everybody because, we're talking about sort of upper body strength. One thing that when we do the open and close at the beginning, and we talk about what our bodies look like, for the most part, we get a lot of constriction across the chest. If you have been working on a computer for years, if you're large breasted, even if you don't have breast cancer, what happens is you end up getting this sort of interior rotation of the hands. One test that I have people do is I have them sort of jog in place or do a fake jog in place and then drop their hands and see where the hands finish. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the hands to finish along the side of the body. So the middle finger is kind of going along that seam of our legs. What happens is if you're tight in the chest, right? If you're large breasted, you've been on the computer for years, and then you add surgery to that, we end up having this sort of protective mode, right? And the arms are internally rotated. So we've got this internal rotation of the shoulders. And so what that does is it creates that sort of roundness of the back. Our chest is too tight. Upper back is not strong enough. And so part of the open and close at the beginning is to open up that chest and to work on using these back muscles here in a contracted action. Straight arm plank gets us in that position. So the shoulders should be back, right? So we want to kind of transfer that position to good form. So the shoulders are back, hands are right over, shoulders are right over the hands. And again, I'm in a straight ahead. You're going to feel this in the shoulders. You also you might be feeling it in the core. The key is not to let the core sink out when you're doing a plank, not to have your butt up too high. So you want to have it so that it's just a slight elevation of your backside. And then modifications for the plank is going to be a toe raise. So try just the regular plank. Challenge yourself to do a toe raise. When you do a toe raise, I want you to do that flexion in the foot so that you're engaging the glute. So I've got my toe pointed, I've got everything is really quiet, and then I'm holding it there. Don't let the back get involved. Again, so everything is really quiet, upper body is really quiet, and holding that foot up in the air. I've got my foot flexed. I'm engaging my glutes, right? So I'm engaging my backside. A lot of times, again, going back to sort of evaluating the squat, a lot of people, it's a rare thing that people will have really good form when we're testing out for a squat. In general, most people will go lift from one side to the other when we're doing a squat. A lot of times it's on the same side as a dominant hand. So let's say I'm right-handed, right? So when I do a squat, I kind of lift over to that side. In other words, this glute is overworking and the other glute is underworking. So when we do the side-to-side warm-up, I'm starting to work those glutes, right? And as I work those glutes, I'm going to get stronger on one side versus the other side. So you want to work at a 2-to-1 ratio. If the left side is the super weak side, I'm doing twice as many on that side. Same thing in my plant here. When I'm doing my plank, my core is nice and tight. Now I want to start to engage my glutes. Just going to bring that toe up. Variations on this is toe out to the side. It's going to be a little more challenging as you're holding your leg out. Coming back to the middle, take the leg out to the side. You can pretty much tell out of the gate, like, all right, what side is it easier on? What side is it, more challenging? So you'll find out pretty quickly which side is weaker, which side is stronger. So do a little test, find out which side is stronger and weaker. And again, on the weaker side, you're going to do twice as many on that side. Generally, when we talk about like, how many should I do in any kind of repetition, we say usually it's like 2 sets of 10 repetitions. When we're doing this type of exercise, you're just going to want to hold each side for maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds, if you can do that. You're starting to build your muscle up. If you can't really come out to the side, just keep everything nice and tight. Just bring it up just a tiny bit, as long as the foot is flexed and your glute is engaged. Then the next modification for the plank is going to be a forearm plank. Now it's slightly different than a straight arm. So you're transferring a little bit of the shoulder strength. It's going to feel in a slightly different way. Some people find that the straight arm is easier and that being on your forearms is harder. So we're going to go with the second one. The forearms is going to be what we're going to do next. One sec. Again, in the position, and this one is both of these are good for the couch. When it's super soft, you'll have, it won't bug the wrist. Sometimes if we're doing it with a straight arm, a lot of people feel like, oh, it's bugging my wrists. So we can go through a couple little stretches for the wrist, which is basically straight ahead, pulling forward or pulling backwards, and then dropping bringing the fingers back towards us. And then I usually kind of do a little shakeout, right? So kind of going straight ahead with touching the back of the hand and then dragging the other forward. You can do it also on our surface area where the back of the hands are here, or you're flipping them all the way around the other way. And then to get more stretch, you're sitting down into the stretch. So forearm, if the chair or whatever it is too hard, you can use a pillow, which is fine. Just depends on what kind of surface you like. Going into a forearm plank. Again, we're kind of in that sort of straight ahead. Everything is pretty quiet. You can do this, as I said, you can do this on the ground. I find that when people are just starting off, if they're recovering from surgery, doing a modified plank is really key to getting people back in shape. So keep the head in neutral spine instead of this neutral spot. Don't bring it up too high. Don't let it dip down too low. You're just going to hold on nice and tight, push into the toes, keep the belly button nice and tucked. And you're going to start to feel this. Again, gravity is something that is, you're sort of fighting gravity the whole time. The plank is probably one of the best exercises you can do. It's the best, one of the best for the core area. And because the core is really stabilizing our entire body, right? Whenever we move through anything, if you're moving one direction or another, you know, the core is basically from the neck down, and that's the abdominal area and also the back area. So it's everything in the middle. And it supports our entire structure. So we've got the feet that are kind of keeping us planted to earth. You know, the legs are kind of moving independently, but the core is really keeping the whole structure together. So you know quickly if your core is not tight, and your back is something that is definitely, you're going to feel problems if you've got you know, tightness in your back, and or so keeping the abdominals nice and tight is going to strengthen the entire structure. So the plank is key to the strength of your core. So as much as you can stand doing modified planks, whatever way you want to do it, that's really key. We'll go through some other sort of basic crunches at the end, where we're going to get down on the ground on our yoga mats. So next exercise is going to be what I call an Alpine Skier, and it incorporates a couple different things. So back to our position where we're kind of using the legs, and now what we're going to do is what I call an Alpine swim. So an Alpine position, you know, Olympics starting today. It's think of this as a giant slalom tuck position. And what you want to try and do is think about getting your chest to your thighs. Have your feet in what I call an athletic position. They don't have to be completely together. You want to have them about hip width apart, right? So I'm in this sort of like ready stance. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my chest down to my legs. And then I'm going to do a swim. So my eyes are down. They're looking down at a point on the carpet. And so what I'm going to start doing is keeping everything nice and quiet, and kind of do a swim. So we're starting to warm the shoulders up. The kitty cat loves that. So you're doing a swim. You're doing, that's the breast, that's the crawl. Next thing you're gonna do is a breaststroke. So think about, again, keeping the head down, and you're gonna be swimming through the position. Now, just the weight of your arms may be, in some cases, just enough, right? If you were adding small weights to this, you know, it's gonna be a lot of action. The weight of your arm probably could be enough weight for you. If you can't get all the way into the completely bent over position, come into what we call a chair pose. You know, in yoga, a chair pose is sort of in this sort of seated position. Come down to it like what I would call a modified skier. So you can just bend the knees ever so slightly. Let's say we're going to do what I call, we're going to do a front raise with just the weight of our arms. So I'm in this sort of modified Alpine Skier, or I'm in sort of a modified chair pose, and I'm going to be bringing my arms up, kind of holding, and then back down. So we're going to do a side raise in this position. So that's side raise. Now, if I'm adding weights to this, it certainly is going to be a, you know, it's going to make it a little more difficult. But we're getting a 2-for-1. We're getting our legs strong. We're starting to work on the upper body. Now, we'll switch to a front raise, which is basically going to be like we're going to keep our head super still. Everything is really quiet. You're just swinging those arms and moving the arms up. The next thing we're going to do is a reverse fly. And so the reverse fly is really good for the upper back, starting to work on those muscles of the upper back. And so with weights or without weights, when you're doing a fly, the way you want to think of it is we're hinging at the shoulders. I'm kind of doing this sort of Hulk move, and I'm leading with my elbows. So I want my elbows to be up as high as possible so that if you were looking at it from the front, my elbows are up nice and high. I'm squeezing those shoulder blades together in the back. And then I'm bringing my arms back together. So I'm not moving anything else except I'm hinging at the shoulder joint. Bringing the elbows up, hold, and come back down. If the position itself where you're sort of in the standing position is makes you dizzy, then just don't come quite as far down. But I still want you in sort of this bent over position where you're not, because if you're doing a fly from here, you're doing work, but we want you to be fighting gravity a little bit more. So core is tucked in nice and tight. I'm in my sort of half seated position. Again, I'm going to do my reverse fly. I'm either doing it with weights or without weights. You know, weights, for like the home version of weights, cans are really good. And all cans are not created equal in terms of their weight. So we have lovely refried beans here, which is literally 1 pound, 16 ounces. And then we have our coconut milk, which is 13.5. So try to grab 2 weights that are the same, same weight. Our cans are great. You can go with a bigger can. Glass, probably not recommended, but these make great hand weights. So even those simple exercises that we were doing, for instance, if we were here in our Alpine Skier and we were swimming, doing our breaststroke with our weight, after a little while, you're going to absolutely feel that. Let's say you have 2 different cans, 2 different weights, right? We've got our coconut milk and our refried beans. The refried beans is on the side that's weaker. I know this side's weaker, right? And so I want to work my left arm more than my right arm, more than my coconut arm. All right, so we start to do our breaststroke with our beans, or we're going to start to do the fly with our weights, or we're going to do our front raise and our side raise. You can absolutely do a ton with the weights in hand. Now we're going to go into a bicep curl. Bicep curl is, basic sort of 101. We have biceps and triceps, and biceps are on the front. Bicep is 2 heads for the bi. Tricep is 3 heads, right? So triceps on the back of the arm. Keeping, part of the upper body strength going. Those are some of the major muscle groups that we have for just the arm, not the shoulders, just the arm. So we think about a bicep curl. What you want to do is you want to focus on form. And again, I like to be, whenever I'm doing any kind of standing position exercises, and I like to do everything standing because it works on your core and your balance. You can basically, again, soft knees. You don't want to have a locked knee. Locked knee kind of works in a great way to tear a meniscus. So the joints, when they come together, your meniscus is in between, is in the joint. If you've got that locked and your meniscus is there, and then you turn ever so slightly on that locked knee, you can tear a meniscus. And so wear and tear, saving our knees is a good thing. So always be in sort of what we call a soft knee. So when you're in this sort of standing position, you're in a soft knee, or kind of like a little bit of an, I call it athletic position. So I've got this soft knee. I've got my upper body is nice and upright. Basic bicep curl. I want my elbows, top of forearm, top of the arm, sort of stuck to my body. Elbows are in kind of tucked tight, dropping the hands down and then dragging up. The only thing that you're moving is you're moving that forearm. There's some variations on this. This is sort of the basic bicep move. Again, nothing's moving except for that forearm. Now, you can do variations on that where your arms are at your side, and I've got my weight here, got my refried beans, and I'm kind of in that slightly seated position. and I'm going to take the beans and coconut up, and then I'm going to do like a twist. And so I'm going to twist at the top. That starts to get the shoulder involved when we think about doing a bicep curl. So you're not cheating, you're just doing a slightly different variation. But you'll notice that I'm not really moving the shoulder. I'm not moving my arms up. I'm keeping everything nice and quiet, and I'm doing my bicep curl. Now, those are the cans of beans. When you're making some sort of devices at home to improve your strength training, you don't have a lot of equipment, you know, the grocery bag is great. So you load all your cans in your bag, and then you tie, you know, a little bit of a knot in there, depending on the type of bag you have. And now you've got a pretty good weight to do some strength training with. With this weight, we can do several different things. So depending on how much you put in there, you want to have it maybe 10, 12, 15 pounds, depending on your strength. If we do a pull, or now I've got this weighted sack, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my squat, I'm going to drop it down, and then I'm going to draw this up. So I'm keeping it nice and tight to the body. So if I'm doing it from the side, I don't want to have it too far away from the torso. I'm going to drop down, keeping the head up, being in my squat position, and then I'm going to draw that up. You'll note that I'm trying to bring this up as high as possible. I'm not raising my shoulders up. I'm just drawing it up fairly high. So you can do a pretty good, make a pretty good weight out of your canvas bag and a bunch of cans. Another good back exercise, so that was a shoulder exercise, is just the one arm pull. So take your weights. You're going to have one foot forward, one foot back. I'm going to, again, work on trying to get my shoulder, my elbow up as high as possible. So I've got that bag of weights here. I'm going to draw it up, and my elbow's up nice and high. So I'm looking down at the ground and keeping everything else quiet, and I'm doing a one arm pull or one arm row. It's like I'm sawing logs, but again, my elbow's not too far out to my body. It's here. So I'm drawing up where it's coming really tight to the body. So I'm trying to get that elbow up as high as possible. And then you're going to switch sides. Now I'm not holding on to anything, you know, sort of working on my balance as I'm doing it here. So one arm pulls or the two hand bag pull are excellent for your shoulders, right? So you engage a lot of muscles. Kind of a neat trick, you know, next time, if you do have this is tubing with a handle, right? Which is a great tool, and they make these in all kinds of different shapes and sizes. And every single company has a different color for their exercise tubing. So a lightweight, you know, in one company might be green, another one might be yellow. So they'll tell you on there what the tension is, and you can always make them you can make the exercise more difficult depending on how far away you are from the point where you're pulling. But you can get sort of an array of these. They're not that expensive. You can get them over at Big Five or online. So I always recommend ones with handles that you want to hold on to, you know, make them comfortable. They're not that expensive. Usually a few of these are really good, and we'll go through a couple exercises with those. Or, you know, if you've been to physical therapy, you've got sort of the TheraBand, you know, which is just there's no, you know, nothing is tied on here. It's just a strip of tube, you know, sort of like the band. And then my favorite is the pantyhose. So pantyhose with a knot tied at the end. You know, we're not wearing pantyhose anyways. It's like a perfect COVID experiment where we're not using them at all. But now they're hanging around and they're in the drawer. And so we might as well make an exercise band out of them. So if I don't have any tubing, I don't have the other strap, TheraBand Then I'm going to make my pantyhose, exercise device here. Take your foot and step right in the middle of the, in the leg portion. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do a draw across our body. So we've got our pantyhose and I've created my little loop. And instead of having the handle for the tubing, what I'm going to do is take my arm and draw up and across. And so it's like you're drawing your sword out of your sheath, it's kind of coming up and across. So we're going to do just a bit of a draw across. Again, this is a lat raise, so we're going this side, we're doing this lateral raise. Think about the back of the hand going towards the ceiling and then switch sides. And this, you can tell from the exercises, there's a zillion different things that you can do with all of these bands. And they're great. And so a lot of times that when you purchase them also, they'll have like a little instruction manual for, oh, here's 4 exercises. You don't have to do a ton of exercises to start to work on your shoulders, your biceps, your triceps, your legs, your core. You just need sort of the will to do it and to start it, and so hopefully we're kind of giving you a couple of ideas for just do a few things, do a plank, try to do it for every day, kind of challenge yourself to see how long you can do the plank, do the wall sit, see how long it takes you, see how long it takes you to get up to a minute while you're sitting on the wall, do some meditation, think about incorporating or stringing a few of these things together so that you have strong lower body, core, and upper body so that you can lift your shopping bags, take your suitcase on a trip, right? You even need to take the show on the road. We want to make sure that you are healthy enough to do the things that you want to do and that you're building lean body mass so that we're reducing the chance of a recurrence for any kind of cancer. Couple more things with another exercise, and we're going to get on the ground. A tricep exercise that I like is taking the tubing and we're going to hold it across our chest. So I've got just taken one end or just the middle of it, and I'm just grabbing the other side and I'm extending out. So I'm creating a little tension. And then I'm extending out. So I'm hitting the triceps as I do that. So I'm just doing this little tricep press, right? So that we get the bicep and the tricep, and then we've done the shoulders. Super easy, nothing overly complicated. Get your pantyhose out and then work on your triceps. Triceps are really good. Everyone wants to have good triceps. I always say that we're getting ready for summer halter season. So work on your triceps. They're good for pushing. Anytime you're pushing, if you're doing any kind of push-up, you're working on your triceps as well. Strong triceps are good to look at. All right, we're going to get down on the ground now. So grab your mat. We're going to do a couple different exercises on the ground. I'm going to adjust my camera so I can see what I'm doing. And getting up and down off the ground is always key. If you need to, use a chair, you get up and down the same way. I'm sorry, a little too much on the camera. So when you're getting this sort of base of support, if you didn't have the chair and you're getting it up off the ground, so now I'm here, what I want to do, so I'm here, I'm going to get into on all fours, I'm going to bring one leg forward. So now I've got this stride, and I'm going to use this leg, to push myself up. If I don't have a chair and I'm going to have the other hand out here for balance and or the floor, and think about pushing up off of both feet and then bring your feet together. So I know that getting up and down off the ground is kind of tough, or can be tough for people. So the floor is is just a great place to do a bunch of different things, but I know that it can be challenging for some people. Today we're going to focus on just a few little exercises for the core. And the first one is what I call my three sons. So we're going to have you get on your back, and your feet are going to be up in the air. Now, for some people, even this position may be too much. You know, it's like, oh, the flexibility is nothing, so they can't really get their legs at 90. But I want you to get your feet above your head. And what we're going to do is, I've got a staggered step here. So the leg that is closest to us, I'm going to lift my head, I'm going to lift my shoulders, because we're going to start to engage the core. My feet are flexed, and I'm going to reach towards my knee, my outer knee. You're just going to hold it here just for, 10 seconds or whatever, and then we're going to switch to the other side. So my back is flat. I start to engage the core. You can feel it. A lot of times people feel like, my neck will switch. We'll just keep switching slides. Oh, my neck really hurts when I'm in this position. Tuck your chin into your chest. Try to get it as close to your chest as possible as you have your head up. So we just sort of rock that back and forth. I know the cat's probably right there. Right, kitty cat. Yeah, okay, good. Next thing we're going to do is just a basic bridging, which is you get a little bit of core involved, but it also starts to work on our glutes, right? And our strength in the lower body. So when you're doing a bridge, knees are together, feet are together. So that base of support is together. We want our feet close to our backside. First thing you're going to do for a bridge is you're going to tuck in your belly button. So we're going to roll our hips back and roll the belly button back up, and then slowly come up from the bottom, right? So we think about coming up from the bottom, and then you're going to push, and you're going to get your hips up as high as you can in this sort of position. You can have your hands up if you like. You can have your hands teed out just to work on your opening up your shoulders, but really trying to focus on not pressing down with our hands, but really pushing through with our feet and getting into that position. After you've held this for a while, what I want you to do is think about really having the glutes nice and tight, and then come back down the same way that we came up. So start from the top of the spine and kind of lay your spine down one vertebrae at a time till you're back to where your hips touch the mat. And then we'll do that again so you can practice that sort of back and forth. First off, pelvic tilt. So you tilt your hips back by tucking in your belly button, and then slowly, slowly lift off, making sure that your legs are together. You're pushing again through your feet and thinking about, you're going to feel this in the quads. You're going to feel a little bit in the core. You're going to feel it in the glutes, right? And then come back down in that position. Super. Okay, another core exercise. And we'll do just a couple more exercises. This is sort of a oblique, which are the muscles on the side of your torso. We're going to do a oblique sort of side-to-side reach. So you're kind of floating your arms so they're parallel to the ground. Your head is up, and you're going to tap. You're going to kind of slide your torso back and forth. So I like to keep my head up pretty high. Your shoulders are above the ground, and you're sort of parallel here, tapping back and forth. You try to do that for like 15, 20 seconds, and then come back down. So that's a sort of side-to-side oblique. And then your standard crunch is, we're going to start back up with that pelvic tilt. So we're going to tilt the hips back. I'm going to put my hands on my thighs. I'm going to tuck my chin in, and I'm going to come up, slide my hands up. Now, when I come back down, I don't want to go all the way back down, right to there, come back up. So you're sort of doing these little tiny concentration curl crunches. And this is just sort of a basic crunch Keeping that core nice and tight, your back should be flat against the mat. If your neck starts to bug, tuck your chin in as much as you can. If you are going to go to just getting your head a little bit of support, you're not clasping your fingers, right? We want to have your fingers apart, just holding the head, not pulling the head, just holding the head in place. And think about getting the shoulders up and using like a string is coming from your chest up towards the sky. So you're sort of coming up and down. All right. Those are your basic crunches, or some of your basic crunches. So that is where we finished today. I know you may have questions. If we have time today, we can go through them. Otherwise, you can send them through to Jeanette. We can go through those. Be more than happy to answer any questions and anything that you want to see in the next session. I would say have your yoga mat ready for the next one. We're going to be doing probably a little more cardio, you know, how to get your heart rate up. When we talk about calorie expenditures, most people, when they go to work out, when they think about weight loss, they go out and they immediately start doing cardio. Cardio and activity really attributes to only about 10% of your total calories that you are expending in the course of the day. That's not a lot. Most of the calories that you expend would be based on the amount of muscle mass that you have. That's why we start with sort of talking about strength, because that is key to weight loss. It's key to overall health. That's the end of our show tonight, folks.